Well, hey, welcome back to Figs Talks Fights. It's me, Brian Figueredo. It has been a while. Been busy with that thing, life. Been living it. It's been great. It's been crazy at times. Still in this pandemic shit. Go away. But anyhow, have something we can talk about that escapes all that nonsense. And it is another UFC heavyweight championship fight with Francis Ngannou, the champion, taking on Cyril Gane, the interim champion. But you know what? There is a ton of footage out there breaking down how these guys match up. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. If I'm going to make a video for the longest time, wanted to talk about the interim championships in this division. Okay, and we're going back all the way to June of 2004. Now, wait a second. June of 2004, there was no interim heavyweight championship fight. No, but a heavyweight title fight took place at UFC 48 between Frank Mir and Tim Sylvia. And that is the fight that kind of breaks into all these other ones trickling down from there. So, getting into that one, you had the vacant heavyweight championship between Tim Sylvia and Frank Mir. The reason why it was vacant at that point was Tim Sylvia fought Gane McGee at UFC 44, popped for steroids. You never would have guessed it, Pep, or definitely passed the eye test, Tim Sylvia. Hey, man, no disrespect. Ain't doing that much better myself. But he got stripped of his title, and back then the UFC heavyweight division was tracing paper thin. I understand it's always paper thin, but man, look back at the roster then. It's stacked compared to then. So they had to put Tim Sylvia back into it, and this rising star named Frank Mir was coming up. This young, they called him a jiu-jitsu guy back then because he was one of the first heavyweights that moved like a 155er, at least from his back using his hips. And did he ever pull that shit off? He broke Tim Sylvia's arm about 3 minutes into the first round in this fight, okay? This is a great fight to go back and rewatch, as at the time, the whole crowd, everybody was confused. What the hell happened? Look, Herb Dean, if you ever thought this guy was going to be one of the best referees to take place in history, this was the fight to show it, because nobody had a clue, including Tim Sylvia and Frank Mir, that Tim Sylvia's arm was broken. In fact, as soon as the fight was over, Frank Mir went up to Tim Sylvia and said, hey, look, we can do it again. Tim Sylvia looked and said, yeah, in about 2 fucking minutes, all right? Tough-ass MFer, but Frank Mir gets crowned your heavyweight championship that night. And lo and behold, poor guy with a series of bad luck ahead of him in life, okay, gets into a horrific motorcycle accident, completely shatters his leg in the process. So they had to come out with their first, you guessed it, interim heavyweight champion. So welcome back, Tim Sylvia, to the first ever UFC heavyweight or interim heavyweight championship fight that took place in February of 2005 at UFC 51 between him and Andrei Arlovski. Great fight this was, okay? Didn't last too long, but both these guys came out. Andrei Arlovski, the more slicker guy on his feet. Andrei Arlovski still fighting these days, okay? Bouncing around on his feet. Good boxing, all right? Is able to clip Tim Sylvia. Drops him. They both end up on the ground. He quickly goes for a heel hook on Tim Sylvia. Boom. Tim Sylvia learned from that last fight with Frank Mir. Tap. Okay? So now you have your first UFC interim heavyweight champion, the Pitbull, Andrei Arlovski. So, is he going to unify the title with Frank Mir? Unfortunately, Frank's bad luck was not over yet. He was unable to compete for at least another year following this fight, so he got stripped of his title in just completely taken away, and all of a sudden Andrei Arlovski is graduated to your heavyweight champion. So that's your first interim UFC champion. All right, moving forward, a few years later, a guy named Randy Couture comes back to take on then heavyweight champion, you guessed it, Tim Sylvia. Yeah, he was a constant staple. It seemed like he fought for the title every weekend back then. But then champion Tim Sylvia loses to a guy coming out of retirement named Randy Couture. Okay, I was shocked at this fight. Very clear in hindsight, but Randy gets into a contract dispute with the UFC, and all of a sudden they put out their second interim title. This one took place at UFC 81 in February of 2008, featuring Minotaur Noguera versus, you guessed it, Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia is back in another UFC interim heavyweight title fight. So, what happens in this fight? Well, Tim Sylvia does what everybody did to Minotaur back then. Beat the shit out of him until he got submitted in the third round. So now you have your interim heavyweight champion, Minotaur Noguera. Now, interestingly enough, this interim heavyweight championship ends up getting defended. Okay? So they set it up with, Frank Mir is back. He's back after knee barring the then brand new debuting, larger than life ever, Brock Lesnar. Okay? That took place also the same night at UFC 81. All right? So they set these guys up for a end of the year title fight to take place at UFC 92. Okay? And they had to put it that way because back then they needed big name coaches for the Ultimate Fighter. This is where things get a little murky. All of a sudden, the contract issues that then heavyweight champion Randy Couture was having, all of a sudden they figure it out. And then he's coming back to defend his heavyweight title at UFC 91. Hold on a second. It's very confusing in hindsight. It was more confusing even then, okay? So November 2008, you're telling me you have the heavyweight champion scheduled to defend the heavyweight championship. But at UFC 92 in December of 2008, you already have the interim championship set to be defended. Well, it fucking happened, because if you think UFC is just about putting big names and making money, and that's the new thing, the new WME era, no. This shit has been going on for years, well over a decade. In fact, I'd say decades. But anyhow, off to it, okay? Randy Couture comes back, UFC 91, faces Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar's fourth ever MMA fight, not UFC fight, his third ever one. Brock Lesnar wins the title, okay? Then a month later, you have the interim championship that's being defended by Minotaur Noguera against Frank Mir. What a night for Frank Mir to come back 4.5 years later after that motorcycle accident, completely shattering his leg. Up until this point, Frank Mir was not looking so hot at all. All right, it looked like what once was will never be. Not that night. This is the night that everybody thought, great, we're going to get Noguera and Mir on the mats. This is going to be an incredible matchup. Nope, didn't go down like that. Frank Mir, for the first time ever, showed this guy can freaking box. That's exactly what he did to Minotaur Noguera, being the first guy to ever finish him, and finished him with strikes after dropping him 3 times, and that night become the interim heavyweight champion. All right? So now we got to unify these 2 titles. So why not do it at, UFC 100, what felt like one of the biggest events to ever take place in this sport, in July of 2009 we're at. So you have the heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar rematching his only loss at that point against interim heavyweight champion Frank Mir. Frank Mir looked smooth coming into this fight. I don't think he's ever weighed any lighter. I think he weighed in around like 240, 242, something like that. Never seen Frank look this lean ever. But Brock Lesnar, holy shit, he must have been cutting down from 290 to make 265. This fight was a rout, and I mean a complete rout. Not the most exciting fight out there, but fuck was it ever scary. Because you saw this larger-than-life guy, this WWE guy who I felt at the moment, what the hell is this guy doing in this sport? Shit, smashing people. Took Frank Mir down pretty much with ease in this fight. Didn't fall for any of these knee bar attempts or anything. He stayed in a close half guard, going up with a cross face. Was every once in a while going for the gift wrap behind Frank Mir's arm and just smashing him. Frank Mir survives the first round. Second round, a little bit more interesting. Frank Mir's starting to let loose a little bit on his hands, but then goes for a flying knee against the cage. Of course, Lesnar takes that gift that he gave him, puts him on his ass. I think Herb Dean was the ref yelling at him, listen, you got to work, improve your position, improve your position. As soon as Brock had the opportunity to lay down some shots on top of Frank, caught his back arm once again, all right? So it's behind Frank Mir's head like this, and it's just feeding him some heavy-ass shots against the cage. Fight gets called off. There you go. Finally, an interim champion and a champion. Titles unified. Brock Lesnar, of all guys, is the first guy to unify the titles. So there you have it. UFC 100. From there, Brock Lesnar gets diverticulitis. He's out for a bit. So UFC 111 takes place in March of 2010 between Frank Mir, once again, and then surging heavyweight Shane Carwin. Now, Shane Carwin, not sure if you guys remember him or not, one of the scariest heavyweights, and I think still to this date, the guy with the biggest hands to ever fight in the UFC. This guy, I think, wore 5XL gloves. They had special gloves just for this guy, all right? Frank Mir, I'm thinking the more skilled fighter out of the two guys, but Shane Carwin is just pure brute force and probably a cocktail of shit that they weren't testing for back then. But anyhow, besides the point, that fight takes place. Frank Mir is trying to falling too much in love with his boxing, too content, too calm, can't play that game with Shane Carwin. Shane Carwin gets an opportunity, pins Frank Mir up against the fence, and just starts unloading uppercuts from freaking hell. Repeated uppercuts. Frank Mir drops. He's left unconscious, still taking heavy shots from Shane Carwin. Brutal, brutal fight. But then you have another interim heavyweight champion. This time it's Shane Carwin. All right? Now we got to schedule the unification bout. Brock Lesnar is back from his first bout away from diverticulitis. Coming back at UFC 116, taking place, I think, 4 months later from this fight in July of 2010. Now, going into this fight, there's just no way I'm picking against Shane Carwin. No freaking way. All right. This guy, I believe at the time, was either 10-0 or 11-0, and they were all first round knockouts. This guy didn't even know what his second round was. I think the longest fight he had was the one with Mir that took place I think it got finished 3 minutes and change into that one, into the first. So, here comes the bout. All right? And exactly as I suspected, Shane Carwin just throws heavy leather on Brock Lesnar. This is the first time we're seeing Lesnar backing away, literally just running away from Shane Carwin, flinching, putting his hands out forward, trying to block the shots. Brock Lesnar falls to his ass. I have no idea how he survives the first round. Shane Carwin just putting heavy leather on him, dropping elbows from the top. Josh Rosenthal, credit to that referee, let Brock Lesnar survive that complete onslaught, and he actually gets up to his feet by the end of the first round. Now, coming into the second round, both these guys are gassed. Gassed as hell, but I mean, Lesnar's got a little bit more in the tank. They're both just circling for the second round. You can tell Shane Carwin is just winded as hell. All right, he threw everything he had in the tank at Brock Lesnar in the first round. Brock Lesnar shoots a naked shot halfway across the cage. Carwin just weakly couldn't defend it. Lesnar gets on top of him, ends up submitting Shane Carwin with an arm triangle choke in the second round. Boom, there you go. Second time interim title gets unified. Once again, your champion, Brock Lesnar. Now, at least for the next few years from 2010 on, we have some more clean lineage with this title. All right? The title eventually gets taken over by Cain Velasquez, then Junior Dos Santos, passing it back to Cain Velasquez. All right, Gane's looking like an unstoppable force. And then the UFC announces they're going to Mexico City. Well, yeah, Cain Velasquez as your heavyweight champion would be a perfect time to bring that title fight to Mexico City. So, scheduled for, I believe it was UFC 180 in November of 2014. Problem is, Cain Velasquez, as you'd find out a lot later in his career, had to pull out, I think 5 or 6 weeks before the fight, and they call up Mark Hunt, yep, the Super Samoan, to go fight for the interim title fight against Fabricio Verdum. Should have mentioned before that fight, UFC 180, was scheduled for Cain Velasquez and Verdum. Now, Mark Hunt makes it a pretty competitive fight, but, you know, Fabricio Verdum, the jiu-jitsu black belt, the jiu-jitsu whiz, all right, everyone's expecting him to try to take Mark Hunt down. Second round, Fabricio Verdum throws a flying knee, KOs Mark Hunt stiff. Unbelievable. Val Calveo is throwing flying knees now. Now, I think a lot of Fabricio Verdum's stand-up, you got to attribute it to a lot of people just didn't see it coming. All right, everybody's worried about going on the ground with him. Everybody's worried about clinching with him and shooting on him. That guys like that, they can get away with their striking because, I mean, it's not what your opponent's worried about. So anyhow, now you have another interim heavyweight champion, okay? So they go to unify the titles, once again going back to Mexico City, this time taking place in June in 2015, and very conveniently, it's this fight right here. So, everyone's picking, including myself, look, Fabricio Verdum, who was cute, he had that belt for a little bit. Cain Velasquez, especially to me at the time, scariest heavyweight. This guy had freaking cardio for days, all right, as if he was a 155er. He was quick on his feet, great head movement, pretty well-rounded guy, fierce competitor. This guy just kept, output like a 185er. This is going to be Cain's night. Nice keeping the belt warm for him, Fabricio, but hey. And as the fight goes, first round, it's looking like that for sure, okay? Cain's putting it on Fabricio, but then somewhere in the second round, you start to see Cain Velasquez huff and puff a little bit, all right? Never seen Cain do that in a fight before. A little worried here. What the hell is going on? So, I said this fight took place in Mexico City, which happens to be, I think, 7,000 feet above sea level in the air. These guys are fighting in the freaking mountain, okay? Fabricio Verdum, smart guy. Learned from the first time he fought against Mark Hunt in Mexico City. Get out there early and acclimate, okay? I think Fabricio Verdum did his whole training camp, was out there for at least 6 to 8 weeks prior to the fight. Cain Velasquez showed up like a week and a half before, and by the third round, he was sucking gas, okay? So, in the beginning of the third, Fabricio Verdum is actually starting to put it on Cain now. Cain's visibly slowing down. Goes in for a sloppy shot. Can't do that against Verdum. Verdum catches him with a guillotine. It's all she wrote. Fabricio freaking Verdum unifies the interim heavyweight championship, becomes the unified heavyweight champion, and to this day in history has been the only time the interim champion actually won the lineage championship. So, that was all the way back in 2015. Now, we haven't had a UFC interim heavyweight champion since then. And in my opinion, we really didn't need one now. So let's fast forward to today, all right? January 21st is when I'm filming this video. The actual fight is going to take place tomorrow night between champion Francis Ngannou, all right, and interim champion Cyril Gane. Now, Francis just won the heavyweight title at the end of March of last year, okay? I believe it was UFC 260. This fight took place, all right? Against Stipe Miocic. He won the bout clean against Stipe, all right? No questions said or done. So, as you can see from the prior title fights, what inspired an interim championship, okay? Frank Mir snapping his leg, okay? You had Randy Couture with a contract dispute that he was sitting out for well over a year before he would fight again, all right? Then you had the issue with Brock Lesnar. Guy had diverticulitis. They didn't even know if he was going to fight again. All right. Then the same thing with Brock Lesnar. Okay. No. Never mind. He did get diverticulitis again. But anyhow, just ignore what the hell I just said there. Then with the Cain Velasquez situation, I mean, the guy was already out for a year prior to this fight. Okay. I think he fought Junior Dos Santos in October of 2013, and the Verdum fight was scheduled for November 2014. So a whole year had gone by. He pulled out. Okay, fine, fair. Make an interim championship fight. Present day made no sense. So apparently there was a contract dispute between Ngannou and the UFC. Guys probably already know about this. It's been well documented, well publicized going into this fight that these guys are at odds. Francis is on his last fight of his contract. However, him being the champion, there's a championship clause. You don't get just to walk away as a free agent as long as you hold on to their belt. Different story for a different day, but literally, March, the end of March, he wins his championship fight against Miocic. He says, I want to fight in September. UFC has holes to plug, okay? There wasn't any good upcoming title fights. Everybody was already booked or just fought or injured, so they just out of the blue made an interim heavyweight championship that took place at UFC 264 or 5. I think it was UFC 264. Okay. Just this past August in 2021 between Cyril Gane and Derek Lewis. This was just a complete clinic by Cyril Gane. Derek Lewis, he's a bruiser. You can never count him out. The guy looked like a deer in the headlights the entire fight. Cyril Gane pieced him up, hit him with a heavy shot in the third. Looked like Derek Lewis thought he got eye poked. It was a clean shot. Goes down to the ground. Cyril Gane, ground and pound. Boom. You're interim heavyweight champion. Now, these two guys are former training partners. It's very well documented as well. Everybody knows about this. Let's see how it looks tomorrow night. But if history shows anything, usually the champion comes back. Interim championship has only been won once by Fabricio Verdum. I understand there's not enough data out there to even call statistics for this. And this is fighting. I mean, anything can freaking happen, especially with two hard-hitting heavyweights. So going into this, I mean, for power, you have to give the advantage to Francis. For technicality, you have to give the advantage to Cyril Gane. But these guys, it's not like Francis isn't capable of being a technical fighter. Okay, outside of that Jairzinho Rosenstrike where he just started swinging from all the way back here, throwing shots that just, there's absolutely no striking coach in the world that would tell you to throw a punch that Francis Ngannou was throwing on Rosenstrike, but did it matter? No. That guy got his lights turned out. But as you can see from the Ngannou-Miocic fight that just happened, UFC 260, look, Francis is looking scary. He's patient. The guy's got a hell of a sprawl on him, all right? He can put your ass on the ground, too, if he really wants to. And I don't even want to know what that guy's ground and pound is like, all right? He is pretty good with his feet. His leg kicks are heavy as hell, all right? Cyril Gane, I mean, just because it's apparent that Ngannou is more powerful than him, but, I mean, Cyril Gane's got super heavy hands, heavy elbows, too, as you saw what he did to Junior Dos Santos just a little over a year ago. So, looking forward to this fight. My head says Cyril Gane is probably going to run away with it. My heart's with Francis, all right? I really think Francis has been one of the worst mismanaged fighters to ever take place in the UFC. I mean, you have yourself a gift. A gift. The guy looks like a comic book hero, and he can fight, and he's knocking people out like Mike Tyson did in the late 80s, early 90s. You have something on your hands here that is very special. So we'll see who wins the fight. Okay, seems like the UFC is leaning their promotion more on Cyril Gane. Hate how the politics of this freaking business gets into fighting, but look, it is what it is. So anyhow, that's all I got to say for today. It's been a while since I put out a video, so if you're still around on the channel, appreciate you still hanging out. When will I get another one of these up? I don't freaking know. I don't know. Not gonna lie, don't know. pretty damn busy these days, but I'll do my best, and it won't be nearly as long as between the last one I did and now. So a bunch of shit happened in there in between. Here, I'll start telling you this story. It's none of your fucking business, but I appreciate you hanging out anyways, all right? So, you enjoyed the content here today? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to it, and until next time,